Hi, I'm Dr. Hazel Lawson. I'm a Senior Lecturer in Special and Inclusive Education at the University of Exeter in England, and it's my pleasure and privilege to be on the steering group for this project. And I've spent today learning about this project, fascinating project. It's a really interesting, useful European project which extends our understandings of inclusion and transfers them into post-compulsory settings and the workplace. So today, most of the work on inclusion has been done in schools, and so it's really fascinating to see that some of this work is being extended into the post-compulsory settings. I've been learning about the project this morning, and it draws on the Index for Inclusion, which is an established framework for discussing inclusion, for looking at different indicators as to how we might decide what sort of inclusive processes, what sort of cultures, what sort of policies are happening and exist within our different environments. But what it does have is a much broader notion of inclusion than special education, and I think that's crucial. This index was produced 10 years ago now, and as we're talking about transferring it and using it to develop in the post-compulsory sector, then we need to consider that actually it is 10 years old, and so the way that this project is adapting it and developing it in a cross-cultural way is absolutely fascinating and needed. And I love the way that they emphasise it mustn't be used as a tool for inspection, because all these sort of checklists have that danger, but they're really clear about that in the way that they're talking about the project. There seems to be a great collaboration with different partners across Europe, from Finland, the Czech Republic and Estonia, as well with England, and with their practitioners, colleagues who are from FE colleges, further education colleges, vocational education and training colleges, which all mean different things in these different countries. So it's fascinating, and I think some of the main things to come out of the project will be to do with those cross-cultural understandings and the actual processes of being involved in discussing, collaborating, piloting, examining these issues in their own settings. I do think one of the things I've already noticed this morning is that they're extending the notion of inclusion into the work environment, which is something that the school notions of inclusion have not really thought about. So the notion of community and the workplace are ways that this project takes those ideas further forward. I think also it's really interesting the way that they presenting it in two ways. So it can be a management tool. It must be highlighted to senior management within organisations, but it is also an on-the-ground process learning tool for practitioners to be involved in. I think there's a couple of issues around it that maybe need to be developed more within the project, and one of those is to do with the age of the Index for Inclusion and the notions of inclusion that are contained within that. It is 10 years old. The word inclusion itself might have already had its time, and we're certainly part of a different sort of environment, and part of the notion of rights might be something to be taken on board. It's certainly much more than about special education, and I think that is coming through the project but needs to be kept hold of. And I think another issue that has already been used to critique the Index for Inclusion is the notion of globalisation. And I think the project is fascinating because it's bringing together people from different cultures, and it's talking about inclusion in broad ways that are useful and exciting across the world. But it is still perhaps inevitably a Western European or a Northern perspective. And I think that this needs to be borne in mind when we're talking about its wider use. But anyway, I wish the project all the greatest success. It's really fascinating, and it's been a great privilege to be here and learn about it today. Thank you.